Hi, everybody, and welcome to a very special OSINT Curious live stream. I'm Micah Hoffman, president of OSINT Curious, and I'm thrilled to be here with three of my open source intelligence colleagues, starting with Rae Baker. Rae, why don't you say hi to everybody and tell them who you are?
Hey, so my name is Rae Baker, Wondersmith Rae on Twitter. I work in open source intelligence. I've given a bunch of talks on maritime intelligence specifically. I don't know how that became my niche, but I enjoy it a lot. It's kind of become my thing. So I am very excited to be here today.
Cool, welcome. And you know what, Rae, when I heard ship was stuck, what do we know? I was thinking Rae is that is the only name that came to my mind. That and Jane's, which is, more other stuff. But thank you, Rae, for being here. Yep. And John TerBush, why don't you say hi?
Hey everybody, John TerBush, Gumshoe on Twitter. And I have not done the kind of stuff Rae has done, but it's the maritime stuff, ship tracking, airplane tracking has always been, not always, it's been an interest point to me, at least since my coworker Chet, shout out to Chet, who was way into this, kind of got me into it.
All right.
There's a nice MTV shout out there.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And last but certainly not least, the amazing Technisette. Technisette, say hi.
Hi everyone, it's Lisette, or also known on Twitter as Technisette. And I don't have a lot of experience in doing OSINT in the maritime field. I've done some ship tracking, but not as heavily as Rae does it. So
there's a lot of pressure here.
I'm hoping to learn from you today as well.
Cool. And for those of you that are new to the OSINT Curious project, we are an open source focused group of people that tries to share ways of gathering data, analyzing data, and using that via open source intelligence means. And we are now live streaming on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Twitter/Periscope. This is a live stream and not a webcast, and we want your participation. So if you are somebody that has some things to contribute, you want to say hi, or you're one of our loyal listeners and viewers, please feel free to use the comments on whatever platform you're on to say hi to us. And if you have a question, ask it during the show, and we're happy to try to bring it into the conversation. With that, I guess what I'll do is I'll start us off at the very beginning. In the news, there has been at least one ship that's been of interest to people around the world. And so, we started thinking in OSINT Curious about, well, how can we find out what other ships are waiting to go through the Suez, what's on those ships and all. And so we wanted to have this talk about the OSINT and what you can do. So Rae, do you want to tell us a little bit about maritime OSINT and like the different aspects of it that you've figured out over the years?
Yeah, so a lot of maritime OSINT that I do is tracking specific vessels, tracking cargo. A lot of it has to do with the relationships between different vessels and different ports, and the geopolitical background for the specific areas that you're looking at. I know most recently everybody has gotten into this because of the Ever Given that was stuck in the Suez Canal. I've been enjoying all the memes about the little excavator trying to get the giant empire-sized building ship unstuck.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So that's a lot of what I do is using free sources to kind of infer what ships are what their intentions are and where they're going, where they're coming from, who's
Okay.
on the ship.
So let's start at that beginning piece of understanding what ships are out there and all. Are there some sites that you have found are better than others, or just some sites? We won't go into the comparison. Sorry, but some sites out there that where we can look at ships and figure out, hey, what is that, and what's on board, and where was it, and all of that.
Is that for me? I don't want to.
That'll be a question for
I don't
you.
want to monopolize the stage.
No, let's keep going with you.
Yeah. Well, the big one is marine traffic. I think that's the one most people know if they know anything about maritime stuff. But there's a lot of sites that do similar things. Fleetmon, Vessel Finder, I think, is another one. And they all kind of show like a live map of how the ships are moving. And then, yeah, here you go. So this is, if you click on live map, show on live map, you can see where the Ever Given is now.
And the Ever Given was the ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal.
And I hope it is not stuck again.
Doesn't look stuck.
Yeah, so you can see the path of how it just kind of like floated around sideways there.
Yeah, that looks like it was probably at anchor or something like that. And they're just flipping it around.
Sure.
Yeah, they probably pulled it off to the side to let people go through.
Yeah. All right, let's just see if we can go back.
Yeah, when did that happen? That was what?
Anytime in the last week.
Last Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I can. Let's see.
Probably not without paying.
I mean, these sites have paid tiers as well. So you get more goodies if you pay them. You can go back further in time. You can set up monitoring and other fun stuff. But they have some good free data too, like that. We can see where that ship is right now. If it was under movement, we could see where it seemed to be going and how fast and all that.
Okay.
Yeah, when you dive, like, drill down into a specific ship, you can see some details in the free version of, like, who owns it. Do you still have that up? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
It shows like who owns it and how fast it's going. Where I'm trying to see if it shows how heavy it is.
Where's the vessel going? Yep. Carrying 20,000.
Yeah, it's carrying capacity. Sometimes you can tell or what a ship is doing based on how much it says it can hold and how much it is holding at the time.
Yep. Gross tonnage. Yep.
Yeah. Because that'll tell you if it's really doing what it's saying that it's doing.
Okay. So we can look up what ships are where by using sites like the Vessel Finder, like this one. So I guess the question is within the world of open source intelligence, what do you look for, or what things might lead you to going and researching a vessel? Can we look up cruise ships? Can we look up pleasure crafts of all different sizes, from the huge yachts of the very wealthy down to smaller boats? Or is this site and sites like it just for the multi-thousand ton cargo containers?
Well, that's the fun part. It's all of them. Anything that's registered is on there. Yeah.
Anything transmitting on AIS, and that can include some very small craft. And some of them you'd be surprised that they have a picture of this 20-foot cabin cruiser or whatever, and sure enough they do. But pretty much anything there again is transmitting over AIS so that it can be tracked. These are just radio signals from these ships that are being transmitted.
Yeah, AIS is a little tricky because you are supposed to have it on, but they don't always have it on. So
why don't you tell us about AIS a little bit, what it is, what it does, who has it, and what it can give us, or these sites?
Yeah, so AIS is a satellite tracking system that these ships have, and it's for security reasons. It's not necessarily to tell places where they're at. It's simply for security. So the fact that we track them, they can turn it off. They can go right into the system and they can manipulate where they're actually at, or they can go dark. So like a lot of Chinese fishing vessels, things like that. They'll turn it off when they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So you can't always trust what you're seeing, and you have to be able to use other parts of what you can find on marine traffic or in open source to kind of verify what you're seeing is what you're seeing. If that makes sense.
So would you say, and John, I think you have experience doing airplane research and all. Would you say this is similar to like ADS-B, the beacons?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's basically doing the same thing. It's a safety beacon, so that other ships can see your ship, and vice versa. So as OSINT researchers, we can use this to track any vessel that's transmitting.
Okay.
So it is very much like the aircraft. Of course, ships aren't as fast, so you can see a ship underway for days, going from one port to another, for example.
And let me ask you about the ports. While we're talking about that, are there places that track, hey, this ship has been at that port, and then this port, and the other ports? Kind of, same thing for airplanes, where you can see what places, what airports they've been to.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's a register, so they do port calls. So there's a list of, where they're going, which port they've left. Again, they're not. That's an indication of them doing something they're not supposed to. If they make a port call to, I don't know, what's a port? Like a California port.
Singapore.
Yeah. And then they're not actually going there. They can turn their satellite off, and they could go completely somewhere else. And then if somebody says, "Oh, you were supposed to go to this port," they can say, "Oh, we were going to that port. You can't prove we weren't there."
Okay.
Now we're headed back to that port. So they can manipulate things, and maritime is weird because it's not as policed as you would think, as you would hope. The cybersecurity and just overall policing of waters is not as secure as it should be.
Okay.
I mean, there's international law that applies. So, the captain of the ship is in charge of that vessel when it's out in international waters and all that. So there's a lot of rules, but it is tricky to police because you have national agencies policing things in international waters, for example. So it's a little tricky. And like Rae said, anyone can kind of just turn their transmitter off. And you'll see this when maybe there is some sort of sanction violation kind of transaction occurring. A ship from North Korea is unloading stuff to another ship, and they're going to go dark because they don't want people tracking them. Military vessels don't have to transmit. They typically do have the AS transmitter, and they have it on, but they're not required to. They follow different rules.
Okay.
Yeah. An instance where that, like, just to make that a real life example, there was I think it was a New York Times article that just came out where they were tracking oil. They were meeting up with another ship, getting oil, and they weren't supposed. I think it was going to North Korea, but they would go dark when they met up. So that's the kind of stuff they do, and also reflagging, because you mentioned international.
What is that?
So reflagging is when a ship sailing under, like, United States, they would reflag to another country's flag for their convenience, or while they do something they're not supposed to, and then they flag back to their original.
Interesting. So doing something else under a different flag could potentially hide who they are, or at least make it harder to identify them. But don't most ships have identifying markings on the sides of the vessels?
They do.
Okay. Do those get changed as well, or not so much?
I don't think so. They changed their names. John, you're muted. They changed their names and the flags, and then that's a good indication of doing sneaky things, because they'll switch back and forth, and that's a good indicator of some sort of risk.
Okay. What were you gonna say, John?
I think I hit my space bar there or something myself. A ship could repaint and change their names and that sort of thing. that is certainly possible. I don't know that that happens a lot because a lot of these things occur out in the middle of the ocean. No one else is there to see them anyway. Maybe, some governments with satellites can, but not someone like me.
It's a discrepancy from what they actually are and what they're reporting they are. So that's how they can change it so quickly, because they might be reporting to marine traffic that they are now a Chinese ship, but they're not. And then they switch it back. They can edit that inside of the AIS system.
In the AIS, okay. And if they're out in the middle of the ocean, there's no other. Well, there may not be another place out, another person or ship out there to say, "I see it says John's favorite ship" or something like that on the side there. So to call them out. Okay.
I want to ask that because Holland has been a naval power for 500 some years, right? What sort of stuff have you done with it?
I must have say that a lot of the stuff I've done is with a law enforcement background. So tracking ships where loads of forbidden goods were on. So we would find either boat numbers or boat names and arrival times in harbors. And then we would know, okay, we have to keep track of those kinds of vessels in order to see if people are going to get the forbidden goods off the boat. So that's what I've mainly done. And I've also tried to see, because I've also heard the stories about how to change the AAS system, that you're suddenly a Chinese boat going to a Taiwanese boat or vice versa. So I was always interested to see. I'm a huge fan of people who spot things, so trains, planes, but also ships.
It's a weird hobby.
It's a weird hobby, but they have a huge fora and they share a lot of pictures as well. So sometimes I felt like the information I sometimes got from, for example, marinetraffic.com, it would always be like a couple of hours behind. At one point we had a boat, we were watching the boat on Marine Traffic. It was supposed to be coming into the harbor, and we made a connection to the police who was responsible for that part in the harbor, and they said, well, it sailed like 2 hours ago. So you're like, we missed it. So I tried to see if the ship spotters maybe have information about certain vessels that are coming in or out of the ports. So that's what I've mainly done.
So, Lisette, you mentioned a couple of things I'd like to dig deeper on. And the first one actually is something that one of our listeners or viewers out there, Damien, asked, how do you start to make the additional connections of types of cargo, affiliated destination ports, and continue to pull the threads on interesting information? So, we know that this ship was blocking the Suez, but what was on there? How do we know, or how can we figure out what was on a given ship? Rae, we'll start with you. And
I've always found cargo to be kind of hard to track without the bill of lading or some kind of number to track it. Sometimes you can determine it by the crew postings on social media, whether they're, people post everything. So sometimes people who work there will post what they're shipping. Maybe a specific company like Evergreen, maybe they only ship oil or a certain thing to a certain area, and you can kind of narrow it down that way. I don't know if anybody else has any good cargo tracking sites.
Cargo tracking is a little tricky. Certainly just free open source. There are some websites that will provide that customs information, bill of lading, and those sort of documents. But often you do have to pay to get that in a good detail. At least in experience.
Okay. And now both of you have mentioned, or three of you have mentioned, about using social media and people that are spotting these ships to understand where they are, what they're doing. Can you tell me more about that? I mean, is there, well, first off, you mentioned ship spotting sites? Are there ship spotting sites out there just for people? And it's not a weird hobby to take pictures of ships as they come in and out of a harbor.
It's like the train people.
It's like the train
and the plane people as well.
Yeah, it's the same deal, and they, there are multiple sites where people blog about it, and they post pictures of the ships they saw. Some of them are very localized; they're just for a certain port or city. Some of them are from all over the world, but you can definitely find some useful info on some of these sites. And sometimes they also specialize on particular things, like military vessels or whatever. So there are a number of sites that we can look at. I think we dropped one there, shipspotting.com.
So Lisette, you actually pasted this one in. I know this is a big URL, but
Very long URL. Sorry.
let's take a look at what you posted in there. So what is this, Lisette?
I love
These
this
are
site.
the pictures that are uploaded from the ship that is currently, well, not currently stuck anymore in the Suez Canal, but sailing again. So here are photos that are posted by users. The only downside of this specific website is that people can take a photo and upload it at a later date. So we can see the top result is taken in 1994.
Yep.
But it's uploaded in January of 2021. So there's a huge time gap between them, but there's no filter option to filter for the capture date.
But that can show you if the ship name has been moved to another ship.
That does, yeah.
True.
I also like ship spotting because sometimes you can get interior pictures of the ships. Like if somebody has done like a tour or something.
Okay. That's neat. So it's like a real estate site almost, but for the inside of a ship.
Not quite.
Let's look at the galley. That's
I actually
pretty cool.
saw that a Maersk ship had a 3D tour through it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
And I was going to say the problem with that is not so much that they're showing you the ship, it's that they show you the technology in the ship. And for the most part, technology that's used in ships is old or not updated, or people bring in USBs and stick them in, or, you can find a lot of them on Shodan. So to show the exact specifications of things that are on the ship is probably not a great idea.
John?
I was going to say that mentioning it's like real estate or whatever, there actually are some sites, much like real estate websites, and you could look inside people's houses because they have all these photos. They're trying to sell the house. If you're looking at private, like recreational, not commercial vessels, there are sites that auction and sell private ships, and you can find information on some of those. Certainly, if it maybe has been sold recently or is for sale now, there's a chance that you can find a lot of details about it because they're sharing all that. They're trying to sell it.
I see somebody mention Matterport, and I wonder if they have not so much the ships, but maybe like where they're being built. If something like that would be on Matterport.
Well, and you never know. I mean, the lifestyles of the rich and famous people would love to show off the pools and the other things that are on their ships, and I mean,
yachts,
if you move,
maybe, yeah.
Well, I was thinking about like larger pleasure craft or even cruise ships. I mean, cruise ships are, I think, a different league, right? Because they show you. They show you what's inside of every room, and they have the walkthroughs and the deck layouts. So I would say that those are probably in a different class of ships, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what about social media? Aside from the ship spotting sites, are there certain things that you do on social media to find these things?
So, personally, conflict zones, economic zones where people are angry about things, or they want to talk about it on social media. A lot of times, like in the China area, on Twitter, people post and follow research ships. They follow everything. I don't know so much about other areas, but I know that there's constant postings about where these ships are and what they're doing, and so you can get a lot of information about the specifics.
Yeah, if you're on Twitter or something like that, there are people that are really hyper-focused on some of these geopolitical issues, and they're going to be talking about Chinese ships in the South China Sea and where they are going and what they're doing, or American ships there or whatever. And there's some pretty good resources out there with people that are sharing this kind of information.
Yeah, like you can see here, there's just tons of different people posting where they're going, who's on them, why they're out there.
And you have dates and times too. So here at that date and the time of this tweet, you also have pictures inside of the ship or on the ship. Pretty neat. Now let's go back a minute. Lisette, while Rae and John were talking, you visited my Matterport. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you
I
found
was
here?
just wondering because
Nice.
I see that Ryan in the comments, he mentioned that Matterport was such a great place to go down the rabbit hole. So I thought, well, just have a quick view to see if there are any ships on there. And they
There
are. This is not the only one. And you can zoom in like very, very good. And there's a lot of information to be seen.
That
And you
hurts
can
my
wander
heart.
around the deck. And it's awesome. I didn't know.
I like the papers on the desk. And it lets you zoom in like way too close for comfort.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
Matterport cameras.
Oh, there you go.
Really, really high spec, nice cameras, and you can zoom in on them.
Hazmat.
Yeah.
Or
Fire
fire
hazard.
hazard.
Yeah. Well, these are amazing. I mean,
Look at
these
that
sites are
lonely
amazing.
chair.
What's that?
Look at that lonely chair with the whole yellow boundaries around it. So you can
Some
sit
guy
there, but
sitting
not
there all
move.
night, like drinking
I don't
his
think that's
tea.
for the captain either.
No.
I would hope not. I hope they could see.
No. Wow. Okay. So what's neat about this is that my Matterport and other sites like it are very similar. I mean, we use that for other types of open source intelligence, whether we're looking at a business or we're looking at a residence. We can virtually walk through it. And if you're interested, there is a blog post on OSINT Curious that has information on there. It's written by a man named OSINT Dunny. So these things where people are willingly disclosing information about their vessels is incredible. Now, Rae, one of the things I've talked about, or I've heard about, and maybe John, you know about this too, is on Shodan, the search engine for the Internet of Things. Many people will say, hey, I found this console that is for a yacht or some vessel on the ocean. Have you ever seen or heard of that too?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think you have a blog queued up that I actually had. I have some AIS. All you have to do is know the name of the actual system, whether it's Inmarsat or whatever, and you can search and see what's open.
Okay.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It's not the scariest thing on Shodan by far, but
no. But if you're not familiar with Shodan, there's some stuff on there, and you're like, "Good Lord, I can't believe this is on here." But you absolutely can find ship systems connected to the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a satellite connection or otherwise, and you can get some interesting information about that.
And not just information, you could potentially control the ship. I mean, some of them have just made ships spin around in circles.
Really?
I think there was a hacker who did that, made it just spin around in circles.
I mean, with any of these IoT things, and we can include ship software in that, I think in some way. If there are vulnerabilities, or if you have set it up so you don't even need a password, you can just open it up and play around with it. And there's a ton of this stuff on Shodan. You can still find today people with webcams, and there's no login, there's no password. You just go to the webcam, and it might be pan, tilt, zoom, and you can move around, do whatever you want, because there's no security on it.
Okay, so what we have is essentially methods of looking up what ship is where using like you said, the AIS, and ship spotters and social media. We can figure out sometimes what's on the vessels based upon the vessel finder and sites like that, saying whether the ship is laden or not, how deep it's sitting in the water, what's its draft, and what that ship is known to carry. We also can figure out information about what technologies are being used on those vessels sometimes, but this is more of a reverse. Instead of looking for the Ever Givens console on Shodan, we would probably look for a certain server or a certain sensor or certain thing that would be running a ship's technology stack, and then we would find other ships. So it's a little different than looking for a specific vessel. We also have walkthroughs of ships like the Matterport, and probably, like John said, floor plans and other things on auction sites. Wow, I think the last piece here is who's working on the ships. Is there a way to figure out who's working on some of these merchant vessels and other things?
Yeah. Not only just
Awesome.
LinkedIn, not only just LinkedIn, there's a few sites, and the one, it can be a little dated sometimes depending on the ship. Maritime Connector, it's like a LinkedIn for ships. People go on there and they post, I mean, it has like their blood type, and it goes into like way too much detail. And it's, I guess, to find jobs. There's also like Facebook groups you can join, and, you know, for people on the ships to like talk and hang out.
Okay. And I guess you could also look on the just mainstream social
Yeah.
media, right?
Yeah.
The LinkedIns and other places that might have that. Wow.
I think there are also some of these sites, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but, you know, there are some other sites where, you know, employment type sites, the Glassdoor and
Yeah.
so on, like places where, you know, people that work on cruise ships and all that sort of stuff, that kind of data can be out there too.
Okay. Wow. So we've mentioned kind of along the way, you know, we're focusing on open source intelligence. We're focused on what data can we find out about the ships and, well, maritime activities and who does it based upon open data. You've also mentioned that when you pay for certain services, you get access to even more data that's probably not open source intelligence, but more, you know, registered data that these platforms have access to. I guess the next thing would be is talking about risk, which is kind of, you know, once we figure out all of the open source intelligence data that's out there, all the turn it into information, deliver it to our customers, then we can also help them identify risk to their organizations. Are there things that we haven't mentioned that would be risks to organizations or risks to ships or to other things?
I mean, there's plenty of risk for ships. You have, you know, just the interaction of ships in the sea. Like in China, you see a lot about the Chinese fishing vessels. They're pretty much part of their navy, I guess. There's just the everyday, like, drug trade. those are all risks, and we didn't even get into the IoT devices on, like, in ports.
Like what? What are you talking about?
Oh, smart ports.
Yeah, please tell me.
So smart ports are exactly what you think. It's a ton of IoT devices in a port. So in a heavily smart port, not all of the ports are smart ports yet, but some of them are like entirely smart ports. They have things that help the ship come in and park. I don't know ship terminology. I'm not. They help. No, like birth. I don't know. They help it come in. They help take stuff off the ship, put it on. They do a lot of the manual tasks that people do now that might be dangerous. You know, you have oil platforms also out in the middle of the ocean. Those, I guess, could count as maritime. I like to count them as maritime.
They're in the ocean.
Yeah, those have tons of IoT devices on them as well.
So IoT devices, for those of you that are not aware, are Internet of Things devices. And these are usually sensors or small computers that do one or more types of automated tasks, whether it's sniffing for biological compounds, checking for radiation, measuring distance to different things, temperature, water, whatever. They do these things, and then they act many times as sensors, which other systems will then rely on and figure out, hey, a ship just passed into the waterways, so that we need to go and send a pilot out to guide that ship in or whatever. John, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I realized there's one thing we didn't talk about, which is another way that you can do some ship tracking or keeping an eye on vessels, and that is with Wi-Fi.
What do you mean?
You have ships that have Wi-Fi on them, and not just, cruise ships or whatever, but this can be, I've seen this with military vessels. You can go to a Navy base in a tool like Waggle that has Wi-Fi access point signal data, and pull up their map, pretty much any Navy base somewhere in Russia or the US or wherever you want, and you can zoom in and you will see Wi-Fi identified, and sometimes it will even have the vessel's name or other kinds of details, and you could absolutely see, well, where has this Wi-Fi signal been seen, and you could see other ports that vessel may have visited. I've done this myself. It's not 100%. It's not like marine traffic and an AIS signal, but you absolutely do have Wi-Fi on ships. And if someone picked that up somewhere and recorded it, you can see that.
Okay. And I guess one of the other things, while we're just talking about common things that we in open source intelligence world do that can yield results within the maritime industry, I think we have to really talk about the webcams, traffic cams, weather cams that might be pointed at docks or at beaches or at the shoreline that are being served up around the world.
There was sort of I don't know if it's famous or whatever, but there was an incident in, I think it was Sweden, where some community's big camera to promote tourism to the city or whatever was up on a hill overlooking the harbor, and the Navy had a submarine base there, basically, or some sort of Navy base, and so you could see vessels going in and out on that webcam, right? And I think in the case I'm thinking of, the military officials actually went to the town and asked them to take it down because it was an operational security issue for them, right? So you absolutely can use webcams to track vessels. Certainly, if you're dedicated to it and are going to, figure out some system to constantly monitor, you can find out a lot.
And I think most ports have you can view their webcams.
Yeah, I just pulled up worldcam.eu, which I pasted into the chat, and here we have definite views of ports. This is from cruise ships, but you can see there are pictures like here's over in the Netherlands. There's a picture of a cruise ship. Let's just see if it's out there. I'm just going to click on this live. I have no. Oh well, it's dark over there now. Good job, Micah. But you can see it's actually moving. Lisette, are you doing that? No. Okay. But yeah, I think just searching for things like webcams, ports, those types of things. Here we have webcams that are posted around the world at different places. This one's in, you can see what ships come in and out. So
yeah, you could do a search, sorry, Micah, for harbor or marina and city and webcam. And like Rae said, a lot of places have these because it's a port and business is conducted there, but they also typically are a coastal city. They're trying to get tourists to come and visit and all this sort of thing. So there are these webcams and ways to promote things that are happening in that city or in that area, and you can find those.
I don't think a lot of people realize how big ports are. They're huge, and they have tons of businesses there. And something like a webcam, you can see like entry and exit gates, where their security is posted, things like that.
Yeah, okay. Not just the tourist, like the city puts up a thing, but absolutely, like, you have security cameras on the docks for some business or something, and those might be open to the internet.
Nice. Yeah, so I'm looking. I just took Ryan's suggestion. Ryan said EarthCam's another source. So over here we're looking at. This is not a large port by any means, but here we have an image of Port Jefferson, and you have lots of information there and other ones too. Even just something like this that will show ships going up and down the river. Ships have very distinctive profiles and things on them. So you're not going to see a container ship going down here, but you'll see other stuff in the Hudson. Yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, well, so we've talked about who runs the ships, who owns the ships, what's on the ships, how you can watch them go in and out. Rae, John, Lisette, are there other things that we need to know about Maritime OSINT?
We could talk about I think there was an article this week posted on Twitter. I can't remember who it was, about measuring a ship by the wave pattern, the wake.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that?
Uh-huh. And was it measuring the speed of the ship?
I think it was the speed of the ship, yeah.
It's not speed. Based upon the wake. Interesting. Yeah, and satellite imagery.
Yeah.
Cool. And there's a lot of satellite imagery that refreshes a lot more frequently than what you'd find in Google Earth. Some of that imagery might be paid, of course, but in certain areas of the world, there is, or certain companies you can go to get that more frequently updated satellite imagery. Okay. John, any other thoughts?
I think we've covered a lot of the bases there. Obviously, we could probably dive into almost any of these in a lot greater detail, but that's for another time, I think. The bottom line is there are a lot of open source resources out there that investigators and researchers can make use of to do what you said, track ships, find out what's on them, the information about the owners, and all of that. And, like Rae was mentioning, when these ships go dark and turn AIS off, that can be an interesting event. You can get tells of, okay, maybe there's something sketchy going on with this ship. Yeah, maybe their AIS transmitter was broken. Unlikely, right? It's a safety device, and that does not happen a lot. More likely, someone turned it off. So if there are some ships or a certain area that you are interested in, this can be something kind of like a blurred out image on a satellite that you go, I'm interested in that now, what's there? So there are a lot of things that you can do with this kind of shared data having to do with maritime issues and ships.
And I would guess much like many other industries and areas of OSINT intelligence, geointelligence, whatever, the lack of data is just as telling as data. If you see a ship is traveling in one direction or heading, probably bearing, whatever, traveling in one direction and at a certain velocity, and then there's a blank space of X number of hours, now it's somewhere else. You're like, okay, well, what happened in that time frame? That would be important too.
Someone said to me today that ships are always traveling for economic reasons, so they travel in the same patterns. And if you see them doing something that doesn't make sense economically, then it's probably suspicious.
And there probably is an economic reason.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a better economic
quick
reason.
economic reason.
Yeah. Interesting. And Lisette, thank you so much for doing your amazingly quick research. Is this what you're talking about, Rae?
I'm amazed every time when I see something like this, like, wow, can we really calculate the speed of something moving through water by looking at the wave pattern? It's just, It blows my mind.
Yeah. That is cool. Yeah. And I pasted this into the comments there, the chat as well.
I'd like to see if you could...
Oh, go ahead, Rae.
All right. I was going to say, I'd like to see if you could use AI to determine what type of ship it is by the wake pattern behind it.
I think there'd be several factors, right? Because you have the choppiness of the ocean or whatever that's going to decrease or increase the wave pattern. You have the velocity.
The design has a lot to do with
yeah.
Although when you're sailing into a port, or that has a calmer state of water most of the time,
right? But
so then you would be able to see it probably.
But going into a port, you're also not going to need to know where they're going. They're going into or out of the port,
and they probably would have made a port call or said where they were going.
Yeah.
One of the things that our viewer Ono mentioned.
I was going to mention.
Yeah. Right. That the ship might turn their bacon. I think it's beacon, but maybe they turn their bacon off too.
If they turn their bacon off, if they don't want their bacon, I will think
no. No, I mean sometimes they turn it off for pirates, so that pirates can't figure out, hey, this is where I am. And also with the blockage in the Suez Canal, a lot of ships went down there around the southern tip of Africa, right?
Or
And
we're sitting in that zone near Somalia and you know.
Yeah. And I think the key is that a pattern. Do they always turn their AIS off when they get to a certain spot? Is it normal for that ship? Or are they normally going in a circle and then all of a sudden one day they go off over here and they turn their AIS on like 500 miles in another direction?
Right.
That's an anomaly.
The context is important.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Cool. Lisette, any last things that you think that we should cover that we haven't already?
No, I'm trying to think of other things, but no.
I'm sure that once we end the live stream, we'll be like,
Yeah, then we know
we forgot to
all.
talk about
Yeah.
the missiles on the ships or whatever.
Probably.
Well, and there are a lot of other open source intelligence resources for identification of vessels, viewing of vessels, tracking of vessels. Like Rae and John and Lisette mentioned earlier, some of the resources out there are free and open, and some, because they aggregate the data and make it easy to search, they do charge you for some access to some of that data.
Sometimes that data is open source. Like some of this custom records data is open source. It's just a lot of trouble to collect it up. So sometimes if you're doing a lot of this work, either set up your own system to get that data or pay someone for it.
Yeah.
I did just think of one other thing that when people like fishing vessels who are doing fishing illegally, they tend to turn their satellites off and they track them with, I believe it's VIIR. It's like an infrared. They track their lights because they have to have their lights really bright to see the fish, I guess.
At night, they have to
yeah, so you can get maps.
Conduct operations. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how they end up tracking them.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess there's always a way, just whether that way is going to be pushed over to open source intelligence world so we can harvest it, or whether it's something that's more closed source.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great. If you are tuning in now, you have missed 45 minutes of Rae, John, and Lisette talking about maritime open source intelligence for the OSINT Curious project. If you've enjoyed what you listened to, take a look at the other live streams and videos that we have. Our website, the bit.ly link there to our Discord, the Discord that we are at, the Searchlight Discord is there. And if you've liked what you've heard or you want to just sponsor us, our Patreon link is scrolling across the bottom as well. Well, everybody, I think maybe that's it for now. Rae Baker, thank you for being on here. Appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And I will gladly talk maritime OSINT with anyone who wants to talk to me. You can find me on Twitter.
Can I get you to promise to make a maritime or cross-post a maritime kind of summary of this maybe in the coming weeks on our blog post, on our blog?
This is not recorded, right? So if I say yes, I'm not. Oh.
This is recorded.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Oh, I should have waited.
I have to then.
All right. Well, if you don't, one of us will.
I can.
Okay, cool. And John, thank you for coming aboard.
Yeah, this is fun.
See what I did there?
Aboard.
And,
nobody commented on my great ship pun on the Twitter post.
It was too naughty to talk about. Puns. And Lisette, thank you for sharing some of your time with us too.
You're welcome.
Cool. Well, everybody, we are the OSINT Curious Project, and we thank all of our listeners for helping us with this episode. Ryan and Ono and all the other people that contributed. Thank you so much for doing that, and stay OSINT Curious, everybody. Take care.
Bye.